Hello, this is Tony Timpone, co-director of international programming to Canada's Fantasia Film Festival. You've just watched the amazing The Dark and the Wicked, and we have the stars of the movie with us tonight. They are Marin Ireland, who you know from such series as Sneaky Pete, Umbrella Academy, Girls, and Masters of Sex. Hello, Marin.
Hi, how are you guys?
Great, great. And we also have your brother from the film with us. His name is Michael Abbott Jr. You know him from such independent dramatic films as The Death of Dick Long, Loving, and Mud. Let's welcome Michael Abbott Jr.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me.
So, and what kind of hat do you have on, Marin?
This is Mike's hat from the movie. I mean, not the same one. We all got them, but
Okay.
it's Panther Branch, the name of the farm we shot at.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
So, my first question is sort of the elephant in the room question. Where the heck is Brian Bertino tonight, the writer-director of this superb film?
You mean he's not here? I have no doubt that Brian Bertino is in a dark room somewhere writing his next script.
There
Okay.
you go. That's
And
a good answer.
hopefully it's a scary one and it'll have parts for you guys in it as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, after working with us, I don't know.
So before signing on to this project, were you a fan of Brian's previous films, like The Strangers, for example? Had you seen that? Were you aware of this twisted fellow?
You know, I personally, I had heard of it. I had definitely heard of it, and my friends who watch horror movies had heard of it and were obsessed with him. But I don't, I can't handle scary movies. So when we first met to talk about it, I was like, I got to tell you, Brian, I haven't seen your work and I don't know that I'm going to be able to. And I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to watch this movie either. But the script is so fantastic that I'm willing to learn all about horror movies from you in making this thing because I feel like it's just a good story and really well written. And he's obviously a master of this genre, so I thought I could learn about it from the inside. But he was like, "That's all right. You don't have to watch it." I mean, thank God he's cool because that might have been a deal breaker for other people. But Mike's a lot more sturdy than I am with his emotions.
Uh-huh.
I don't know about that.
Michael, did you watch Brian's The Strangers before tackling the movie?
I had seen The Strangers, yes, and I had seen The Monster. Obviously, two incredible films. I had never actually worked on a horror movie before. It's not a genre that I tend to lean into for no other reason than kind of in the same boat as Marin. They make me a little uncomfortable. But upon reading the script, it was, the characters were so rich. And I was thrilled at the fact that the farm itself became a character in the film, which I think is pretty poignant to the story. And I thought, for a first foray into horror films, what better man to allow me to follow in the footsteps than Brian Bertino. A lot of people really consider him one of the masters of horror, and after spending some time with him, I have to second that emotion.
How did Brian pitch the project to you folks? How did he sell the characters, the storyline? So much of the story is very mysterious and enigmatic, and not a lot is explained.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when I talked to him, he was very much sort of speaking about it like he wanted to make a really intimate story, and it's very personal for him in many, many ways, including being where he, grew up and his family's there. And it felt like to him it was like the way he talked about horror to me was very much like a deeply personal experience, like what's the scariest thing you can personally imagine. So that was very inspiring to me because that feels like, well, that's not just a horror movie. That's like high stakes in any good movie is like, what's your biggest fear? How far can you push these emotions? And so that's sort of what we talked about a lot was kind of the high stakes of being around family in a time of crisis like this. So we talked a lot about that as the story, and sort of a family that was kind of rotting from the inside a little bit, where their sort of family connection just had kind of there was always sort of something that an evil spirit could sort of smell in the water. Blood in the water is what he used to say a lot. Like, I was like, is this a situation where it's sort of random? Like, if the devil just picks a random house, or he was like, there's blood in the water, And I remember being like, that makes so much sense though about a lot of stories. That isn't just a horror movie, it's a really a beautiful sort of idea to explore, like the sort of depth of the fear there and losing people that you love the most.
And Michael, what attracted you to your character?
Yeah, there were several things that attracted me. I think the idea of the themes of loss and isolation, I thought were intriguing to me from the beginning. I grew up in the South, and because of that, I tend to read a lot of scripts where the South is kind of portrayed in a caricature vein. And this was one of the first scripts that I read that was set in the South that the characters were organic, and I could picture having conversations with these people in my hometown. And the fact that he grew up down south and kind of knew that culture, knew those people. I think we were kind of on a similar plane of thinking in terms of what that was like and how that would affect the characters in these given circumstances. So,
could you describe the collaborative process between you and Brian in developing your characters, or was it already pretty much on the paper?
Do you want to start, Mikey?
Yeah, Brian and I had several phone calls before I arrived in Texas, and we didn't have a whole lot of rehearsal. I don't think actually we had any kind of rehearsal. Marin and I feel like we had a little bit of a leg up because we had worked together once before, actually playing siblings in another film in the Radiant City that Sunny Mauhi, who is a producer on this film, was also a producer on that, along with Jeff Nichols. So Marin and I knew each other. We had a rapport. She hated me. She couldn't.
I was already there.
Absolutely.
Got that for free.
Did not want to work with me again. And they paid her so much money that she just couldn't turn it down. So I'm a huge Marin Ireland fan. So any project that she's attached to, if I'm invited on board, I will run craft services if I have to.
And you did have to for this movie, I believe.
And I did.
Well.
And I made a hell of a chili.
Yeah. No, I mean, I would echo a lot of what Mike said, but switch the names. I had the best time with him working on In the Radiant City, and to get to do even more with him just seemed kind of dreamy. And Brian and I had a few conversations. We had there was the briefest of rehearsals, but it was also one of those things where I remember feeling like, I remember him telling me that, there was a way in which my character was sort of standing in for him a little bit. So I remember telling him just give me nudges along the way if something doesn't feel quite right to you. But I was like, but it's honestly, so much is on the page for me in terms of the relationship, and all of that felt so clear to me. We talked a little bit about backstory stuff that wasn't in the script, about maybe what her life was like from where she was coming from when she kind of arrives, what life exists as in terms of what she's wearing and what she's coming from, what life she's leaving behind. But you didn't really need it, honestly. It was just sort of fun to talk about that stuff with him because he cares and he's got an incredible imagination. But it was, he was incredibly collaborative all along the way as well, in terms of helping us kind of stay in the right groove once we found it, and just sort of guiding us back to it when we were getting a little bit off of it. But it was really organic.
With the pandemic and all, and this being a story of isolation and illness, this movie couldn't be more timely than ever. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think I hadn't even really realized that because I am scared to watch it, so I forgot what it was about. But no, that's really fascinating, and I hope that that resonates with people.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. I understand that this was shot on Brian's family farm. Is that true? Oh, that's why.
Yes.
Yeah, his folks were
Yes.
there.
Uh, um, how did the location and its surroundings add to the encroaching horror in the story?
I think we did there were a lot of night shoots on this project, and there was very little light. I just remember it always being very dark. And there were a lot of moments where you honestly just didn't have to work as hard to be spooked and to be scared, because you're on this dark farm in the middle of nowhere, and the sounds that you hear. And like I said before, I really feel like I was able to see the film last night, and I feel like the ranch really becomes another character in this story, and really kind of helps drive the story forward and set the tone for what this family's going through.
Yeah.
Yeah. For many of us, the dying father is yeah, a little too close for comfort in this day. Were those scenes difficult for you as well, and how personal was this story to Brian?
Go ahead,
You know,
Marin.
thanks, Mike. No, that was really challenging for me. That stuff was really challenging. My father is still alive, but personally, we're not very close, and I definitely feel like those primary relationships, when they're portrayed in a movie like this, they they certainly hit for everybody in a pretty specific way. And I feel like whether your father is someone you're not super close to, or you have a challenging relationship with, or you've lost, it's incredibly powerful, a story like this. I think it's part of what feels almost like a fable about the story in a way, and that in that way where it feels like it can sort of resonate with anybody. This sort of sense of like losing a parent in some way or other, and coming home and feeling like your home isn't your home anymore. All of that stuff. It feels that always felt to me like an element of something bigger than just this story, like a fable or something. But it was, those scenes were hard. I remember feeling like, especially when we're in that little tiny bedroom and fighting about everything with like the nurse or the doctor or whatever, it's that stuff starts to feel very, very, very real, and not at all. Especially we're not shooting with special effects of any kind. So we're shooting a movie about people who are worried about their dad, we're shooting that movie. So being in that little house and dealing with those circumstances was certainly very intense.
You have one of the best shock scenes in the movie when you're in the shower and the ghost or the,
Oh
um,
my
the
God.
the spirit or whatever you want to call it of the father, you hallucinate. I don't know how to explain it. Shows up. That was such a great shock sequence. What do you remember about shooting that?
Oh my God. Well, we had to build a separate shower and bathroom in like the sound stage of the like shed or whatever. So because the real life shower is far too small. So like I was sort of in a shower in the middle of basically like a garage. What is that? Is that what would you call that, a shed, Mike? What was
It's
that?
it's a work shed where
It's like a
one would
work
keep
shed.
farm equipment.
Farm stuff. So,
Yeah.
so I was like in a shower in the middle of like an open shower in the middle of the room, and then I honestly, it was basically like shooting the two sides of it so separately because I was basically playing it to the camera, and it was. I do remember though. I have to say, like Brian was so incredible about like sort of teaching me about shooting this kind of stuff, and like the kind of stamina it takes to sustain, these extreme emotions. Because I remember being like, we would sort of talk in terms of numbers. Like I'd be like, how scared is she? Like, is this like a 10? Is this a 9? Is this a, like compared to this other thing we're doing or the other thing we did or whatever, like, is that appropriate? So I do remember being like, just tell me it looks right. I don't know what, I can see this shot in my mind. I know what it's supposed to do. Just tell me this is like working properly. And then I know that they shot the other side with Dad, like after I was out of that crazy open shower in the middle of a room. But yeah, it was pretty weird. I mean, it's fun. It's horror movies are so technical in that way, in a way that I was sort of surprised by, because there's so many more angles, and you're frequently, like you were saying, like you're often, your point of view is often the character's point of view, or you're looking like directly. So then I'm playing into the camera, so I'm not seeing what you're seeing. So that was sort of wild to try to imagine that.
And Brian always talked about shooting in the triangle, which was, from someone who hadn't shot a horror movie before, that was part of the learning experience. Was, we would shoot our coverage and we'd be like, hey, great job, way to go. And they'd be like, hey guys, we have like 4 more setups. Like, we're
tired. We're done. Yeah. We did our thing.
I'm gonna phone it in from here on out.
Xander Berkeley, who plays the priest in the film, is a fan favorite from a lot of the horror films he's done and TV shows like The Walking Dead, Candyman. He's terrific in the film. What do you remember about working with him? Any anecdotes? He plays such a colorful character.
Mike, what was the spider thing? I wasn't even there for that, but that's a good story.
The crazy thing about Xander was he's so much like the character in the film, as not him personally, but the way that he showed up on the set. I think he shot out in a day. I think he was only there.
It was like 2 hours or something. Yeah.
And he kind of came in as this mysterious character that no one really knew, but within the first half hour that he was there. We were shooting in the rain outside the fence, and he had this real spider that was on the brim of his hat, and he was taking photographs with the spider, and it was like he had hired this Hollywood spider to be an extra in the film, and he was so careful that the spider showed up in every shot, and he wanted to make sure he was in the right space on the brim of the hat. He's such a creative guy and open to playing, and no 2 takes were ever the same. There was no getting bored with what Xander was giving you, because it was always fresh and new and creative, and yeah, he was a blast. And I think he looks fantastic in the film. He's spooky as hell.
He was so game. I just remember he was just like, what else? Like Brian would be like, just stand really far away and you just say the thing. And it's like, all right. Like, I mean, me and Mike are like, well, where do I, and he was just like, cool, stand here, great. And then he'd be like, dude, the spookiest guy in the world. And you're just like, wow. He's like, this sort of stuff comes really naturally to him. It feels fun to him in a way that was fun for us. He
also did his own makeup, which I was so amazed by. He refused to let anyone do his makeup. So they gave him the time to do his own makeup, and he came out and he looked great.
And Marin, you had your own spider story, your own sequence with it.
Oh yeah.
Was that a real spider or CGI?
CGI.
I thought so. Okay.
So I don't know what it even looks like because I haven't seen that part. But I imagined a very scary spider. But those kinds of things were so funny for me to do because, like, I would be like, what? All right, let's see how this plays, and then he'd be like, oh, it's not that big a spider or whatever, or it's not that big a reaction. I'd be like, oh, okay. And then try to picture a littler spider or whatever.
The film didn't have a spider wrangler, or they could have hired Xander's spider for your scene.
I know, exactly.
Well, we had a sheep wrangler, a goat wrangler, a horse wrangler. No spider wranglers on this one.
No spider wranglers.
So did this film make you farmhands after a few weeks?
I got very close with some of those sheep and goats. There were a couple that I think about still. I really got close with them.
Judy.
Judy, the scene-stealing goat. She was a diva. They're all girls. All the sheep and goats you see in the movie are girls. They're all women, professional women. And Judy was this goat who was like real super socialized. And she would just be like in front and center of every shot. She was great. She was only like, I don't know, is that shot still in there, Mike, when she jumps on my back? Did that go away?
I think that went away.
They trained her on the day.
But it's right here.
They trained her on the day, the Wranglers, to like leap on my back and knock me down. She's real smart. She's really quick. There were these sheep that I loved. One named Buttercup. They're really cute.
And there was a three-legged spider, a three-legged goat that was actually a three-legged goat.
In the movie they just put
that was not special effects at all. They just put some blood on the amputee goat, which I thought was.
I know that looked terrifying.
Well, Michael, your scariest scene on the movie was the day you wrapped your final scene. Could you tell us what went wrong?
What went wrong? Jeez. Last shot that I filmed, last take, my last day. We were on the back porch. It was the scene where I tell Louise that I had seen our mom in the yard the night before. And the crew was we were on the back porch, and the crew was all set up. The camera equipment and the sound guys were all across the side of the front of the porch. And Brian was out in the yard, and he kind of motioned to me to come and get a note. And so the only way I could get off the porch, I couldn't go down the stairs. I had to step down a whole 1.5 feet. And I stepped down, went into the yard, and I'm standing there listening to Brian, and my knee feels like a rubber band twisting. It's like, oh, that's an odd sensation. So I went back to the porch, sat down with Marin, and we finished the scene. By the time I finished the scene, my knee was like a basketball. Wow. And I couldn't put any pressure on it. It's I wish there was a better story for this, because it really makes me sound
crazy because you just were like, yay, Mike, oh, we're gonna miss you, and you were like, I think I have to go to the hospital.
Like my rap goodbye to everyone was them picking me up and carrying me to a truck and putting me in the back of a truck and driving me to the ER, and that was it. Like, that was my goodbye to everybody, which was that was a first, but
very dramatic, drama queen.
Total drama queen. But April 1st, I had meniscus surgery. They were able to repair it, and I'll never work again.
I mean, I do think that, like, you specifically, you got so good at like wrestling those sheep. I'll blame it on the sheep. I know that I feel like those sheep probably got it just to the point where it's about to snap. The day when we had to like give the sheep the medicine, we were like just running around trying to grab sheep, and like,
right.
That was a crazy day. I blame it on the sheep. My friends.
The sheep loosened my meniscus.
Yeah, yes. That's right.
We'll see if that holds up in my class action lawsuit.
Yeah.
We have some questions from our audience, and first one is from Jamie. And Jamie wants to know, Marin, how the heck could you appear in a horror film having never done one before, and being that they're too scary for you to even watch?
Well, the script is great. So like I was saying, from where I sit, I don't see any of the CGI stuff or hear any of the scary music. So I just had to sort of put myself in a super extreme emotional state a lot and talk to Brian about like stamina and how to maintain that. But otherwise, it's like me and Mike are shooting a really sad and intense family story. We're not seeing a lot of the other stuff you guys are seeing. We're seeing some really sad stuff, but that's the thing from the inside. It's like we're shooting a family story that's like a really extreme situation. But so that was something I could definitely tap into. And that's when I was like, well, Brian, I can do this. It's going to take a lot more shots, I guess, a lot more setups than I'm used to. But as long as he could talk us through that. Because there'd be lots of times where I was like, if I've got to scream a lot, let's like make sure that I don't have to do it too many times in a row or whatever. But that was really intense. I learned a lot from though. I learned a lot about like what horror like can be for people and what it can mean to people, especially what it means to him. And it makes a ton more sense to me. I get it in a way I didn't before, not having seen a lot of the really great ones. I've seen a few, but I have to watch them with like all the lights on and like happy music playing.
Can I ask you a question, Tony? Because you're the horror expert here. So what do you classify? What do you think the difference in a horror film and a psychological thriller is?
Good question, Michael.
Horror films tend to deal with the fantastic or the supernatural, the unreal. Psychological thrillers are, more like Silence of the Lambs or Psycho, where they're more real. They're more, human based. They're not the monster in the closet or the demons or the devil. Psychological, it really has to deal with the mind and human emotions and that kind of thing. Yeah,
that's interesting because I kind of, after seeing this last night, I feel like it kind of toes the line of both. You get a little bit of both, which I remember getting that feeling early on when I read the script, and I love to see that it seems to have held up in that vein. I don't see a lot of horror movies, but I feel like that's not super common, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. They're usually not that kind of fine line between horror and psychological thriller. It's usually pretty much all in one camp. But this film really walks that fine line quite well, where so much of this is just in their minds. Is this really happening? Is there an evil presence that's infected the farm? It kind of keeps you guessing for a time, and that's I think that's probably why the film is so strong. Yeah.
Sweet.
So J.D. Palmatier wants to know about the prosthetic effects on the film, if you observed them while they were being applied, and if you have any anecdotes about some of the gory highlights from the film and some of the macabre makeups.
I only had one real experience with it, and it was the sequence with what's his name? Charlie? Is that his name? Charlie. Mm-hmm. Charlie. For some reason, I suddenly was like, that can't be his name. When I'm like covered in the cuts and I'm like cutting myself, that took an extremely long time. I listened to like half an audiobook while that was going on. That was not my favorite day. It's fun. It's fun afterwards when you like have a bunch of cool pictures you can show people. But that took probably about 3 hours, I think. But that was the only day that I saw even any crazy makeup happening. I wasn't there for, like, what else would it have been? Mikey, did you have any?
I didn't have any personally. I did get to see The Devil. And that was pretty incredible to see. Tara, the makeup artist on this was such a fine attention to detail, and obviously I think in her taking her time, I think it really paid off. It really, because it doesn't read like makeup to me in the film, which I think is what you really want to go for, especially for a story like this that is so organic and you're dealing with real people. It's not a bunch of monsters running around. So when you do get these inklings of evil, I think her attention to detail really made a difference.
Carolyn has a good question. She says that the fact that your characters are non-believers in the film seems to have kept them from finding more solutions than a churchgoer would perhaps turn to. How did you both approach this?
Well, we did bring in the priest and his spider. Yeah, I think that in terms of approach, it was definitely an important part of the movie they don't have a community in that way. They don't have a community. They don't have anything bigger than themselves to turn to. That was purposeful on Brian's part. At least I remember when we talked about kind of where Louise is, that not having anything else to sort of anchor her in the world is part of what sets her up in this situation, that that she and her brother are more alone than other people might be. So that was definitely purposeful. And it felt like for them, at least for my understanding of the two of them, like it's part of, in a way, how their family sort of failed them as kids, not specifically with organized religion, but just in making them feel like they're not rooted anywhere. They don't have this anchor. They don't have kind of a strong sort of anything holding them together. And that is one way of doing that, but and especially in this part of the country, it's a way of doing that, but it's something that obviously it sort of signifies something that they were lacking as a unit, that sort of allows for the kind of spaces between them for something to sort of enter in.
I tried to convince Brian to add a pool boy in here somewhere, and it just never worked out. I think the film would be so much stronger if there had been a pool boy. Inappropriate?
And a pool, for that matter.
Exactly.
So has this movie given you guys the itch to seek out more horror films, either as an audience member or as a participant?
I would be in more. No, absolutely. It was fun. It was hard. I mean, it's exhausting, but it was fun. It was totally fun. I don't know how many more I can watch in that way. I thought it would make it easier to watch it knowing the mechanics better, but I still found it. I tried to watch it and I made it through about 15 minutes, and then I was like, "Yee!" and I had to run. But but then I was like, "Mike, how is this? Okay?" But I would totally be in more of them. Like I said, I feel like it absolutely taught me a lot of what it can be, and I feel like I get it in a whole other way. And part of it is talking to Brian too, his knowledge of it, his understanding of what it can do, how profound it can be. It was really eye-opening for me in so many ways.
Right, right.
Yeah, I certainly found a new appreciation for the genre, and I am excited to kind of delve into some of the horror classics and kind of pick them apart and see if I can spot the triangle. I want to see the triangle.
So what do you guys have coming up next?
I'm supposed to shoot. We're crossing our fingers. There's this graphic novel series called Why the Last Man from a few years back that I've been waiting to shoot the first season of for a couple of years. We did the pilot a couple of years ago, and I think we might finally get to start shooting it later this fall. Fingers crossed. We'll see. At some point, that's the next thing that I'm supposed to shoot whenever the world will allow and COVID protocols are installed. But I'm excited about that. It's a great graphic novel series and great people involved.
Excellent.
I just I was shooting a film called Peace in the Valley in Georgia in March when the poop kind of hit the fan, and we were shut down around the 15th of March. And I just was back in Georgia a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, and we finished principal photography on that. It's written and directed by a gentleman named Tyler Riggs, and also stars Britt Shaw. So I'm excited about that. And a couple of television projects coming out in the next couple of months that I'm excited about. And unfortunately, I can't talk about any of them, but I'm excited about them.
Great, great. Well, in the meantime, audiences can discover The Dark and the Wicked when RLJ Entertainment releases it the first week in November, both digitally and on demand. And for all our Canadian friends out there, please go to www.fantasiafestival.com to screen more exciting films in the weeks ahead, and all the free events we have planned. Be sure and check those out, which anyone could see worldwide. I'd like to thank our guests, Michael and Marin, from The Dark and the Wicked. Brian Baldino's exciting, scary as hell supernatural psychological thriller that'll just blow you away if you haven't seen it. And be sure and tell your friends, tweet about it. You could also follow me at Tony Timpone1 and to hear more of my praise to this film. So thank you again, Michael and Marin, and lots of luck with the film and all the other exciting things you have coming up.
Thanks so much.
Thank you for
Thanks
having
for
us.
having
Thank you
us.
so much.
Good.
Yeah.